hesitant to say because I know that you may be looking at something else that you.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Hello and welcome. We are back again, Rishikesh and I from Azim Premji University, with our 14th episode of the first 1,000 days and beyond. As always, we have a very senior and special guest with us. We look forward to today's interactions, and as usual, please engage on the chat, ask questions, and let's have a very meaningful dialogue again today. I hand over to Rishikesh to introduce our guest for today.
Yeah, thanks, Kinnari. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. It is, in fact, my pleasure to introduce our guest today. Many of you, of course, would know her because of the kind of work that she's done and for so many decades. So, Zakiya ji, welcome. So, I would like to share a few things for some of our younger audience who may not have had the privilege to have met you earlier and, seen your work or read your work elsewhere. There are also some of our audience who are coming in to listen to ECCE related aspects, only through this webinar. Ms. Zakiya Kurrien, as we all know her as Zakiya ji, is the co-founder of Center for Learning Resources, Pune. She's also Director Emerita currently. For over 4 decades, she has been in the education space. So many of us who entered education, have pretty much had our learning curve in this space by understanding, studying, reading about work that Zakiya ji has done. Of course, very, very long ago, she did her MA in education from Smith College, USA. And since then, for over 4 decades, her professional work has spanned across the education space, primarily focusing on disadvantaged children with a very strong focus on strengthening the domain knowledge and pedagogy of classroom and systems level in ECCE. Foundation literacy and numeracy and the teaching of English in multilingual contexts are also areas that Zakiya ji has focused on over the years. She has developed a wide range of teaching materials, TLMs, as we all know, in all these areas. And I think many of you who've been in the education space would have also had the privilege of using these materials and seen the kind of things that it does within our classroom spaces when we do use this. She has been part of a number of missions, her involvement has given the number of decades she's been in the space. Starts off with the 1986 policy, wherein she has been part of the working group on ECE. And since then, almost any policy work, Zakiya ji has been part of it, particularly with regard to the ECE space. So the 2013 National ECCE policy, the recent National ECCE Task Force, the Karnataka ECCE Experts Group, are the many groups that Zakiya ji has been part of, because of which we currently do have all those documents coming out of the work that these groups have done. She has served on the Academic Council of NIPSID, the World Bank Technical Advisory Group for Intersectoral Research and Child Development. She's been on the advisory committee of TIS Early Literacy Initiative. She's been part of the ASR Global Initiative for FLN assessment tools, and she has consulted multiple NGOs. She currently also is member of the Alliance for the Right to Early Childhood Development, and recently also constituted Early Learning Network of India. So Zakiya ji, it is really a pleasure to have you on this webinar of ours, 1,000 Days and Beyond. I'm sure our audience, as much as both of us, Kinnari and I, would be really enthralled just listening to your journey. So let's begin with that. I welcome you, and I would like you to just start by sharing what has your journey been like. It's decades long journey. When did it all start? How did it start? What made you go and do a MA in education. So these would be the things that we could begin with, and we would be really very interested to know.
Thank you so very much for an extremely generous invitation to be present here within an undertaking which you have launched on the Azim Premji University, which is a full-fledged MA in education in early childhood care and education. Am I right in my understanding that this is the first, that it's a pioneering venture? I have not heard of at the MA level a degree dedicated to, which is a fantastic kind of a step forward for the nation, actually. And hopefully there'll be more. But thank you for inviting me today. And yes, I'm really honored to be here. And so in answer to your first question, my journey and how did it all start, etc. Well, actually, I, as an undergraduate, my undergraduate degree was in English literature. And as you may have some sort of notion from many people, when you do a BA in English literature, after that, you're sort of wondering, well, now what next? Because what would be open? And so in my case, people said, okay, you write well. For some reason, I had that reputation. So I thought, I could do copywriting, for instance, in an advertising agency, or I could go in for journalism or something. But I did try a stint, very short stint at copywriting, but was very bored. And then I decided that really a teaching career, and I knew that I did have a certain affinity to young children, both family and otherwise. Also, I had attended some schools and things. So I did do a short stint as a school teacher and in Mumbai after undergraduate for a while. And then, of course, it was necessary not to just continue to just without any kind of real knowledge, So I was looking at the B.Ed courses, and in those days, the options were only either the B.Ed or there was the teacher training for nursery education. And there really weren't many choices. And the B.Ed didn't really charm me very much when I looked at the syllabus and so on. And so I was fortunate to get a scholarship to study, to do an MA in education in the US. And so that's how I got there. Now, this degree was actually an academic cum practitioner degree. Maybe you are following the same in the university, where it could lead to an academic further PhD if you wanted to pursue research and that kind of, or as a practitioner, it also certified you to teach school, to teach in American schools. So it was sort of, in a way, a perfect match for me. And the department, when you, at that time, when one applied to places abroad, you were looking at various departments. And what struck me was that the title of this department was Education and Child Study. Because in that little stint I had done in Mumbai in teaching, what had actually I had got engaged with was how were these children learning, what's going on. And in fact, now, the thing of doing mathematics, coming to the same sort of answer by using different mental sort of operations that children, and encouraging children to do that. In a way, though, I say to myself, I was already starting to do those things because I was interested in what are they thinking? How are they getting there? And so that child study as the title of that department. And I was fortunate that I got into that department. So that was the MA in education. And then there was the foundational, the developmental psychology, and I took the elective cognitive psychology, which then brought me to a lot of observation that had to be done with young children as well as grade school children. And that gave a very good kind of background in fact, cognitive psychology one was fortunate that in the vicinity, Dr. Jerome Brunner happened to be doing his work at that time, and the department arranged for me and 2 other girls to actually go and visit. And, it was,
Wow.
universities were communities of scholars. They welcomed you to come and spend sort of a coffee and a morning with them. And I did that even with Eric Erickson, actually, from during MA.
Wow.
And, it really sparked an interest in both child development and this whole aspect of cognitive development in early learning. So that was sort of my early introduction as far as ECCE was concerned. And then after that, we had always decided, I got married soon after, and we'd always decided we were coming back to India. There was no question about that as soon as my husband finished his doctorate. And I managed to get a job in a lab school of a college of education. And that was a great experience, because in a lab school like that, at different years, you could teach at different levels. So that I did a stint in kindergarten. It was a K to 6 school. And so I did do a stint in kindergarten teaching, but I was also at that time very much interested in early reading, early literacy. And we got the opportunity, the teachers there, to be on a rotation basis, coordinators of different aspects of curriculum in a given year. So 1 year I was doing reading curriculum K to 6, or another year I did social studies curriculum, and then this college of education. And that really was very useful in terms of wanting to return to India and work in education in India, because it gave the opportunity to also mentor students of education from the college, because they did their practice teaching in that lab school. So that was a really good opportunity. And at that time then, the kindergarten was, of course, one of them, because many of them were choosing early years. And so that took me into the kindergarten classrooms also a lot more. And then came time to return to India immediately after my husband got his doctorate, and I resigned and we returned. Now, before we returned, there was this question, we were returning after quite a few years. And so what next? Yes, we wanted to work in India, but what next? And, the NCERT had very recently been set up. And my husband was in correspondence with Sri J.P. Nayak, who I'm sure not only you maybe have met, he single-handedly wrote the Kothari Commission report, and he was involved in founding the NCERT. And so, we wrote to him, and he said, "You want to come back to India? Come." And he actually sent us application forms for applying to NCERT on our return. So it was a sort of a good feeling that, okay, there's something tangible that one was coming to, and so welcoming. And actually family and so on was all in and around Mumbai. And my husband got a chance to be at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, where we lived. And that's when I discovered through various channels that I was visiting programs and things that what was missing was in-service teacher education. The programs, the quality was so low in municipal schools, rural schools, balwadis, etc. But there was nothing for teachers who were already teaching. And that is what in ECCE then I decided that it was as important in ECCE, but I had to familiarize myself with after coming back after. So what I did was I took on, was happy that there was one sort of rather elite school in Bombay that was interested in doing this. So I got a chance 2-3 times a week to do school-based service. And on the other end of the spectrum, with very disadvantaged children, migrant children, the mobile creche program in Mumbai.
Right.
And that really set me on more so on the ECCE path, because that's my friend, family friend, Devika Singh, who I then met many times, but also Meena Swaminathan, who she was a great support, great. I mean, I was really inspired. I must acknowledge my debt to these two people in leading me to much more further work in ECCE. And then, of course, in 1984, my husband and I co-founded the Center for Learning Resources. And there in Pune, we moved after we left Tata Institute campus. And our first clients were Balwadi organizations running Balwadis. We had a three-pronged approach, okay? The one was that we would identify significant areas of work in the national arena. We would have an R&D kind of component, because we wanted to offer these technical in-service programs to upgrade the quality of education at various levels, for which we ourselves needed to learn. And that R&D kind of component had to be there. And then the technical support to various programs, which led to a lot of work in upgrading. At that time, it was Balwadis, because even ICDS had only just sort of come on board. In fact, I think 1986, wasn't it? And we started our center in 1984. But very soon we got an opportunity to do projects even with ICDS.
Okay.
So I don't want to go on and on. I could, but I just wanted to say one thing more in terms of my journey, which is that in the work at CLR, the important thing was to identify what were the gaps. And there were three gaps. One was that the dominant model was the child development model of physical development, social development, social, emotional, cognitive, and there was the aspect of the actual reasoning abilities, because the model had been taken mostly from Montessori and Tarabai Modak's indigenized Montessori. And what was missing, I felt, was the language and cognitive. So we put into that curriculum a program called Thinking Things Out, which stressed the relationship between cognitive activities and language, which was missing in the curriculum at that time. And then, of course, everything had to be no cost, because there was but we felt that there had to be some low cost materials, some basic set of materials. And also the theoretical undergirding had to be simplified, and the teachers had to be able to know the why of what they were doing, not just activity upon activity. So were some of the things in ECCE that I felt were important and that I tried to carry forward.
Yes, so wonderful. Just so wonderful listening to this, Zakiya ji. So, I mean, before I get Kinnari on, just one more follow-up in some sense. But then, these missing things must be something that you have continuously seen as you have reviewed what we would have done, let's say, every 5 years, 10 years, because you've been part of so many of these efforts to continuously work on and build, a better space for, at this point of time, focusing on ECCE. Currently, when we now are in 2025, what would you say would be the biggest missing piece that I think, or that you think we all should be concerned about?
Well, one of the things that, of course, everybody in this space, all the professionals are struggling with, for instance, is how to get play-based ECE into Anganwadis. And it's a real struggle because, and also what partly is compounding it is that foundational literacy and numeracy, as Nipun stresses it, there's this slight downward, a trend of the downward formal learning that is creeps into the ECCE space, So that's sort of one of the things I think that is that the question of letting the child and to do the different types of both free play and the structured play and all that. And if it's done in a very sort of, I would say, formalized routine kind of way. So this is one of the continuing missing pieces. And another very important continuing missing, and that's partly to do with the kind of curriculum guidelines and activity books and so on that are put out, that the why in all the training, that undergirding of the why gets missed. And it's through the activities. Here is a day-by-day activity calendar. Here is a month-by-month activity calendar. And in that, why it is being done, I think, is lost. And that continues even now.
Yeah. Thank you, Zakiya ji. I mean, your journey and India's journey in ECCE, like we were listening to Vinita ji earlier, that it's gone so much in parallel in the way ICDS and other policies and the work went hand in hand in some sense. So, along with the gaps that we see today, where do you see ECCE in India today, especially between the 1984 and the 2020 policy? I mean, like you rightly said, play is the pedagogy, yet we don't have enough understanding of how to do it. We have aspiration of having our children read and write, but then we lose out on the childhood aspects. Apart from this, where do you see in-service, for example, and other aspects of early years today? And especially with the new curriculum. I mean, a lot of CLR's work also has been on community-based engagement with families and this work on birth to 3-year-olds, So if you can shed some light on that.
So, in my sort of this earlier piece where I was responding to Rishi that, what was the journey, as you could see that it was on ECE, early childhood education, and it was Balwadis and Anganwadis in sort of teaching and learning. And right up to, I think it was in 1996 or so, that I started, and we all in the center started waking up much more to that earliest level, But in answer to the first part of your question is that where are we now as opposed to then? I mean, there's been a huge stride in the, at least the acknowledgement of the importance of the space. There's no question about that, and also government, I mean, taking on the thing of even, and the NEP has done a lot of things to say that, these 4 models of Anganwadis where there would be more vibrancy. Unfortunately, we don't have the funds to put in a proper teacher for the actual ECE component of Anganwadi. So there's a continuing gap as well. But I mean, in terms of also when you get to materials, for instance, there's so many more people in this space, so many different models of materials, that are available. And there's one unfortunate thing, which is where some private, in the private sector, where some programs, quite a lot, I would say, which do miseducative things, unfortunately, the sector that we are working in and many NGOs are working in and government is working in much more, the aspirations of parents and things They want a mimic of what's going on in the private sector. So that is another place we're at now, where that has to be countered as much as possible, and to see what is the influence within the private sector also, which I mean departments like yours would be very much be able to be influential also with the kind of many times what happens is that in the training, for instance, the students come out of programs, or even where we've done training within NGOs, even in primary education, the training has all the right principles and everything, but when they go into an existing school or an existing program, then it's the management of that school and what they have said. And so these young, enthusiastic students find it difficult to be able to actually implement all the wonderful things that they've learned, So there is a lot of advocacy to be done also to bring us to a place where we can really say that really good, sound ECCE is practiced in both the private sector and the public government sector. Yeah. But the community-based and so on, maybe we can talk about it a little later when we can, because it was after quite a lot of work in straightforward early childhood education that I came personally to the thing that, my goodness, look at this 0 to 3 and if that is the main window of opportunity, why aren't we doing it? And we launched on it in 1996, actually, and acted since then with various revisions and new things happening.
Yeah. So, I mean, that we are on to the first window of opportunity. Perhaps it's time that we also know about it a little more, Zakiya ji. We could maybe share the program that you worked on, and if you could take us through that, the first 1,000 days and its significance and the nature of familial care environments that are required for young children. Should we put the presentation up?
Yes, this would be the right. This would be the right time.
Yes.
Okay. So I think people would be seeing it as a full screen, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So when we were looking at that, yes, what are we doing with all the neuroscientific research and the developmental psychology research that was coming to the fore, much more so after the Education for All conference in 1990. That's when I sort of started sitting up, and some of our staff as well, that let's think about this. And so there were, of course, Mobile Creche, I think, was the only organization at that time running wonderful creches for young. That was a center-based approach. And we felt that when we were working in communities, actually through the Balwadi programs and in ICDS and so on, there was a great need for education within families. So we launched on 2. We researched first and then actually formulated a program for home-based support for holistic early child care. And as you see these 3 points, that we felt that the center-based services, there was just limited coverage. Even now, it is imperative that we have creches. For instance, Karnataka has done a wonderful job under UMA of actually going into seeing how they can be on a large scale done for the state. But it's still a drop in the bucket. So we have to get to the actual parents and caregivers within families. But the state programs, even when they are there, they are fragmented. So I think you'd agree that, it's one thing, one area or one aspect or another. So poshan bhi, padhai bhi, but then, okay, overall health or the health of the fetus, that doesn't feature. ASHA workers, they're doing mainly health. Okay, the NCF for the age group 0 to 3, the Navachetna, just has picked up on the stimulation aspect. I'm very happy that they're actually putting it on the national map, since we've been trying since, as I said, 1996 to say it is a very important area. But each of these deal mainly with a certain aspect, the holistic approach of addressing the whole child is missing. It's missing as a one program. And I should confess here that we ourselves at the center, when we first started, since we were working in education, we said, we've come at all this neuroscience of brain development and whatnot. Let's us also do a research project in taking this aspect of stimulation. Wherever there's health and nutrition going on in programs, we take the stimulation aspect. So we first formulated that. And we did an action research project. In it, we learned that we were on the wrong track, because when you're talking to mothers, grandmothers, they are not concentrating only. That day the child has diarrhea, that day the ORT has not worked, or that day, somebody's thrown a tantrum, some child, and we just decided that this won't work. We pitched the whole thing, the entire formulation, and we went into a much more holistic approach to it. Next slide. So this was the next, yeah. The urgency, of course, is, as you see, this persists. I mean, these are not old figures, okay? For a country like ours, to have this kind of a profile of 32% underweight, 67% anemic. And what a lot of people don't understand is Anganwadi's ICDS is far from universalized. Far from universalized. So all these programs that poor single Anganwadi worker is supposed to engage herself in, including Navachetna, but so many of the children that we want to target are simply not even under her jurisdiction in any way, okay? And of course, this is shocking that 11% only receive an adequate diet, suboptimal infant feeding practices. And then, of course, the stimulation, we felt that the why and how of that was easier for parents to understand health inputs and nutrition inputs. Stimulation was not as easy a concept to put across. So we did do a lot of work in that, but combining it with health and nutrition. Next. Okay. So just a quick glance at the critical periods. This is that, as you see, I mean, some of the most important, the emotional control, particularly language, which is at the base of all lifelong learning, and the cognitive skills, they all fall well before 4 years of age, and a lot before 3 years old as well, And when we say that the critical period wanes, it should not be understood that after that there's no development in this area, but that we have not actually emphasized when it would have the greatest effect on brain development. So we have not capitalized on what research has shown of the actual strong window of opportunity. Next. Okay. So what were our main goals was optimal child development, in very underserved families. And ours was not just awareness in terms of information, but behavior change. And behavior change in day-to-day practices, okay? So for behavior change, it had to be certainly in simple language. That science of holistic development had to be conveyed with a why responsive parenting, because you were persuading, you were trying to persuade, and that should lead, with that information, should lead to the activation of that knowledge through an education program. So actually WHO defines the education part as activated knowledge. So that is the what and how of holistic early child care. And then I would say the most important, which is largely missing in the programs that put out all kinds of information, do this, do that. But how do you communicate it? It has to be a two-way process, a dialogue with primary and secondary caregivers. By secondary, we mean grandmothers, adolescent, older sisters, brothers, fathers, and so on. And of course, the wider community also has to be motivated to support early childcare within families. Next. Okay. So this is our program. I'll run through it actually quite quickly. It's the interventions that we've been doing. It's been revised 3 times because we've had to, each time the norms, for instance, in feeding come through, we had to revise those each time that we felt that in more of the communities, a different kind of contextualized approach had to be followed, etc. So, but the very first edition came out in the year 1999. It was called Right from the Start, but that was an English master edition. Actually, it went down in different languages, and the recently revised is right now in Marathi, and there's a Hindi version. Okay. Next. So in this program, CLR is targeting at highly underserved communities, as you see in the photographs. The third one is a semi-urban, so it's a little, but in fact, some of the urbans could be really, really very. The middle one is an urban basti in Lucknow, for instance. And the first that you see is rural Maharashtra. Nothing very much has changed. Today, if you go to the same spot, in many ways, you don't see the kind of development that you think you hear about. I should say that. Next. So these are the components of our program, okay? This holistic childcare, caregiver education, because the cycle of optimal child development begins with the health of the mother-to-be. So we have messages to do with adolescent girls' health. Even age of marriage, weight, basic weight at the time of adolescent development and so on. Then there is a lot on care during pregnancy, because what happens to the fetus influences optimal child development, early care, neonatal, nutrition, and not only nutrition information, but the feeding practices is very important. How they adopt the feeding practices, infant health care, play and stimulation, and responsive parenting actually takes into account all of them in a way. It's not a separate kind of component. All of it has to be in a responsive way. But emotional security is another area we also cover, and protection and safety. That is both in terms of child protection in physical ways, as well as emotional ways within families and outside. Okay. Next. So our package looks like this. The core components are a large flip chart with a guidebook for the communicator, entirely through visual means, and each flip chart has at the back a very brief kind of way of engaging caregivers. And along with that, there is a package of, in all cases, visual material. So, you asked me about Navachetna, for instance. I think with a lot of this and even Mobile Crash's work and other NGOs who afterwards also started working in this space, a lot of this information, has, of course, and rightly so, gone into places like NIPSIT and places like NCRT and whatnot. But now even you see Navachetna, basically it's a do this, do that. How this Anganwadi worker will take it forward, it remains a question mark. So I think communication strategies and communication materials are very, very important. So we have the video clips and various other things that are handouts and so on, and that forms the entire package. Next. So this is just a quick glance at the process. There has to be initially a baseline and getting to know the community. And then we used to try out things with Anganwadi workers, but really we found they did not have time. They did not have time. So we went for a model where there would be community-based women who are recruited and given a small stipend to carry this program forward. And we train the community-based workers. And then they conduct the group sessions with mothers and grandmothers and older siblings and fathers, if we can get them there as well. There's a certain focus on fathers as well. And community engagement. So we have ECCE days, and that, which is also stipulated in the policy. And home visits particularly are also part of it, that the communicators do. And at the end, there would be a kind of impact assessment. But I should say one thing about impact, which is that when we get CSR funding, for instance, the impact of this program is not what happens after these sessions, 20 sessions have been conducted. That's not the only impact. It's lifelong impact. And therefore, the parameters and the indicators cannot be what is seen immediately after the program, because the science itself says that if you do this, even at age 14 and 21, there is an impact. So that's something that we have to educate the people who expect impact of a different kind. Next. Okay. So we get to know the community first, do a baseline of what they already know, and then there is the training of the communicators, because they, as I said over here, they are the key frontline for success. Those who carry those messages and how they do it, that constructive conversational communication. Next. Okay. They conduct then the periodic meetings with this interactive process. They also demonstrate various care practices. And this is followed in some case, particularly for at-risk children. Certain homes are identified where there are home visits also that they do and report back. That's all part of the monitoring process anyway. Next. And then for the wider community engagement, there's actually sort of fun days as well. Exhibitions can be done, there can be play areas, there's toy making, there's street plays, there are quizzes and different strategies. And you know, when you have staff who get enthused, they think of different things to do in different places also. And that brings men also to the fore. which they don't attend the meetings as much, but we can engage them when video clips are shown on an ECCD day, Next. So just a quick thing of some of examples of some of the kind of visual materials. We do try to explain the neurological thing in very simple language as to what is happening with the synapses and in the brain, and how, with the responsive caregiving and with the stimulation and with the right nutrition and so on, the density of the connections matters. And at that sort of simple level, they understand it. It's not that difficult if you do it in a very simple language. If you look at the one where there's the little baby on the weighing machine, if you want a minimum birth weight, okay, of the 2.5 and so on, then down below are reminders for the communicator. What are the elements to talk about? But there's also notes at the back. The rest that the young mother should have, we've tried to depict that. Exclusive breastfeeding, that's that bottom one. Now the nutrition chart, that sort of thing as an activity. So sometimes when people come, they say, oh, how come you've got a bottle there of milk? Surely that's not the right thing, because you're supposed to promote. But if you look at the four children, those are 4 age groups. We put a pebble on a given age group. So if you put a pebble on the first and you say to the group, okay, pick out what would be the right nutrition, they should actually put their pebble only on breastfeeding, okay, which is depicted. And all the rest should remain, without anything. So that way, at different ages, under 3s, what are the acceptable and what should be the nutritional things? It's like done as a game also. Next. These, a lot of these are now you'll see even these and more. These are just some examples of the stimulation kinds of things, but trying to also bring out that you do it when caregivers have time. So you could be doing something else, but you also can be talking to a little child in a cradle, and you could be washing clothes or you could be bathing, but something can be going on in terms of language and community and play. You give a sieve in which the water goes, and great fun for a little child. But these have, these and more are given in the Navchetna guidebook. So in that sense, there are many ideas there. So, and we have about 40 odd ideas. I should say one thing about the Navchetna guide, since you asked about it, that one of the critiques is that you would think that there is only, we're such a diverse communities but if you look at the illustrations, it would seem as though we're totally homogeneous, okay? And the gender aspect, I counted, if you leave the first 6 months, because it's difficult to tell if the baby is a boy or a girl, but if you leave out the first 6, there are about 30 to 35 of girls depicted. The rest of the 120 are boys. Okay, so things like that also, I feel that those people putting out these things, you should pay attention to some of those, and particularly who are the caregivers, because we have neo-Buddhists, we have tribal mothers, and we have Muslim parents, and we have so many different and wonderful diverse communities, and I feel that they should have been depicted that way. Next. Okay. And these are some of the discussion things, safety, what is happening, and they identify what are the dangerous things happening in the kitchen or outside, and how also some of the things that happen with children in child rearing. This little girl, she's jealous of the little boy, and these are done through stories. So there's Sarika, why is Sarika behaving that way? And then what will her mother say, etc. Then, of course, there's the screen, the phone, and wanting to have the phone in their possessions. And how do you deal with that? Because the screen at this age is to be avoided, and that is a scientific kind of knowledge that has to go down. Next. So this is, some of the exhibition that I talked about. It's in each language, it's about 40 posters. They can hang anywhere. And as you see the text, it's "Bacche bolo, tumko kya kya chahiye?" And the child replies that it's really made uchit vikas for me. Unka vada mujhe chahiye, from the caregiver. And that way, each of the posters, in many cases, has a poetic text. I'd hoped that the song could be played, but that Hindi thing, I could tell you it was set to the tune of Ichakadana, if you know the song. So it would go, "Bacche bolo bolo bacche, tumko kya kya chahiye, kya kya chahiye?" And then the child replies, etc. Okay. So next. So these are our children. And I would end, we have to think that for them, you can't say tomorrow is enough. For them, it's today is important, And so this is our program.
Right. Thank you, Zakiya ji. When we spoke of the series, the first 1,000 days, and the criticality of it, which we all know, or there is a growing awareness of it. But finally, when it comes to family environments, and like you said, the comprehensive approach of talking to siblings, older sisters, parents, grandparents, and actually building the awareness in the immediate community of the child. I think somewhere the gap between systemic efforts and what happens in the family, that's a gap that and not just, of course, CLR's work, remarkable work, is with underprivileged communities, but today in our more and more nuclear family environments, even in the urban setup, parents constantly seek as to what do we do with young children.
Yeah, I agree.
And grandparents online may be giving support, but that's again online, and then we talk of screen and children getting exposed to screens too early. The dialogue and this responsive communicative environments that you kind of highlighted through CLR's program, we need to do so much more in that area. And like you said, you've been doing it since mid-90s, and we are in 2025, but it seems that it's even now that we need it more and more, despite all the information available outside. So thank you very much for taking us through the program that you've developed so much early on. And like you said, there are so many reflections of this in the Navchetana, right? Many of the activities that you shared, and they've tried to bring in again that diversity, yet, like you said, more can be done given the context that we are and the diverse country that we are. Rishi, anything that you would want to have?
I had a couple of things, but also I'm looking at the time and we barely have 7 minutes. No, this was absolutely fascinating, Zakiya ji. So in fact, I just wanted to ask you, with this kind of a material, I would want to link it to a question that one of our audiences have asked. As a teacher, how is it that I take some of these things into my classroom? Right. So the question is, how could I do these in classroom practice with students, and about emotional care? Because, as you were talking about it, also there is, this understanding that this could be workshops for caregivers and they understand, but then, is there, what are your thoughts? How would you respond to that question from possibly a teacher, Monica?
Yes. For a teacher in a classroom, you're dealing, first of all, with a whole group of children. In a program like this, which is reaching families, within each family, it's only the one or two children. So the whole approach is different. But what teachers, I think, can definitely use in terms of the kind of approach is with the parents of their children. You know, a lot of schools do have programs for parent awareness, and there's so much in, for instance, Kinnari, you're quite right that in the urban situation also, and in middle class and upper middle class situations, a lot of this kind of awareness matters. That you gave the example of the use of the screen. There's the example that obesity, for instance, as opposed to undernutrition, you know, and those are messages that would very much apply to urban children, and teachers can involve themselves in alerting parents to some of the important messages that have to do with childcare at home. But bringing it into the classroom, it would be observing the children and understanding who might be needing the particular alerting of parents. I don't know if that answers the question, as opposed to a direct thing of this approach with your children in your classroom.
Right. The other quick question, I mean, we are really running short of time, but something that we like our speakers to address to this audience is that, caregivers, educators, teachers, curriculum developers are some of the known fields in which early childhood professionals seem they can enter. But what does this field really have to offer today, and where do we see a range of professionals? If you could just share your quick thoughts on that, and then we move on to a little bit about the university's initiatives.
Right. Do you mean for this community-based kind of thing, or generally ECCE?
Generally in the domain today, with more and more awareness, what is it that we really need to engage in?
I really think that well-informed young people coming out of a university program like yours, and of course the opportunities would of course be usually through NGOs or through NGO partnerships with corporates. Okay, but there are many, there's training where training would be needed. There is a lot of sort of reconfiguring to contextualize of a program in a given geography, but the actual career would be through a civil society organization and its partnership in two ways. One is its partnership in CSR programs and its partnership in government programs. Because in a government program like CLR now, our staff, we have these 3 district Anganwadi program, okay, that's ICDS, but why are people recruited by us being able, they get a salary from whoever funds us, but they are very much involved in the documentation of ECCE practices that are going on. They're monitoring, they are also doing training, they are trying to counter miseducative things that are going on, etc. So there is a role within civil society organizations where they are partnering with CSR or partnering with government. Okay, and there's a big role, I think, of creative media. That is another. A lot of students who would have that ability or want to go into that, documentation in creative ways, material for messages in creative ways, etc. There's, I think, a lot of scope there as well.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, that the teaching as a profession and working for in-service development through the not-for-profit and the CSR sectors seem to be the most important avenues where there is direct possibility of engagement for students who graduate from such programs. And of course, then more niche communicative work that they need to do as communication and media professionals. Right. Yeah, so thank you very much, Zakiya ji. I think that brings us to the end of our session today. And we do take a couple of minutes to share with our audience on this program that you were referring to, the Masters of Early Childhood Care and Education, and other initiatives at the university. So many of our audience also happen to be our diploma students and others who've been engaging with the university. So in a way to create the need as well as respond to the need on the ground, and where we are as a society and a country to say that we need professionals on field. We recently launched the Masters of ECCE at Azim Premji University at our Bangalore campus. And this is a 2-year full-time program. Our first batch has begun this year. We just take you through a quick snapshot of how the program is structured. The next slide, please. Thank you. The previous one, sorry. Yeah. So, a range of issues that we happen to discuss on this webinar are perhaps just the glimpse or a very surface scratch, but looking at early years development, looking at foundations of ECC, what as a domain it is, curricular aspects, the early stimulation aspects. So a bunch of things that form the core understanding of early childhood care and education, which means the birth to 8 years is what we really look at in this program. The next slide, I'm kind of quickly running through. You may be able to see much more of elaborate information on our website page, the Azim Premji University's website page. This program, again, given the need on the ground, we feel that we need practitioners, people who are equipped to directly go work on the ground, and also are research oriented and have an academic research pathway. So students in their third semester can really choose how they see themselves as professionals and want to take up the pathway of their choice. The next one, and some of quickly like ma'am was saying, Zakiya ji, that monitoring, evaluation, leadership, looking at media communications, looking at early intervention and inclusion. These are some of the elective courses. So the first 3 semesters really are on core foundational aspects. And then we have the final semester on a whole lot of choice-based courses that students can really do. Apart from this, of course, creative expressions and other things that students do alongside at the university. And these are 2 very beautiful campuses. The Azim Premji University's Bangalore campus on the left. It is in Sarjapura. It's a campus with residential spaces, large halls. And then we have the Bhopal campus, which started in the academic year 2023. And the ECCE program, the MEECCE, is offered at the Bangalore campus. The next slide. Quickly, now our admission season have already begun. So anybody with an undergrad discipline, be it in arts, sciences, medicine, engineering, and you really feel the urge to engage meaningfully on the ground, practitioners who have some experience want to pursue further. This is a program which brings professionals, undergraduates from a range of disciplines, and then builds a common base and takes it up over the 2-year period. We have standard processes like a national entrance test, a very, and some bit of analytical general knowledge aspects with English language, since the program is in English medium. A short written component typically aligned to the field, and then there is an online personal interview that happens with faculty members. The idea is to get interested students. These are not very difficult benchmarks to cross. These are really welcoming, admissions process that we have. So please pass on the message where you think that there are young people trying to figure what they should do, in their professional careers. The next slide quickly. So these are the dates for the immediate round. We have a couple of rounds over until March 2026. This is the first round that has just begun. The dates are on your screen. The semester, our academic year starts in July 2026. The next slides. Why Azim Premji University? I think many of you join us with the knowledge, but nevertheless, the Azim Premji University is a very socially rooted organization with its work of the foundation that really guides the vision of the university. The program in itself is highly field based, right? I mean, not just the pathways that you choose, but from the first semester onwards, 2 days a week on the field, getting teaching experience, so there's a lot of field and research based work that we do in the program. It's an inclusive campus, and mean truly inclusive campus, right, in terms of socioeconomic backgrounds, other identities, right? So it's a environment that supports learning to every deserving person who wants to pursue good higher education. And of course, financial support and English language support have been something that the university really offers, and there are many mechanisms and institutional mechanisms to facilitate that in our students. So yes, Azim Premji University, if you're looking for a very diverse place to enrich yourself as a person, as well as do a high quality program, I would think, that it is one of those places that you should consider and speak about when you speak to young people. So yeah, that is.
There's just one question, Kinnari, by Fauzia from Hyderabad, as to how can I join the master's program. Well, it's a a full-time program for which one will have to be in Bangalore. It's not a residential program compulsorily, but then you have to be in Bangalore because of the full-time nature of this master's in ECCE. But those of you who are interested in a hybrid while you work, wanting to understand this domain, there is the option of a diploma. The diploma is in a hybrid mode, wherein we would like to have you here on campus for a very limited period, and the rest of it happens through the week in an online mode. So please check out all that on our website. You get all the details. But yeah, just once again reiterating to Fauzia that MA-ECCE is a full-time program, and it requires your presence in Bangalore through the 2 years.
In Bangalore. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we've well overshot our time for today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Zakiya ji. It was a pleasure and honor to have you with us and know about your life journey and CLR's work on the ground. Thank you very much to our audience. As always, it's great to have you all, and we see that many of you come back to these webinars later. So thank you and keep doing so. We shall meet again in November with another speaker of eminence in the early childhood space. Yeah. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.